Hello, everybody. Once again, I've decided to just make a video to talk about a couple of the things that I've noticed in Endless Space 2 so far. As you can see, this is late game, turn 124, just before the win. I'm way, way, way ahead as the Sophons. Easy game, mostly because of how the galaxy generated. I don't know if everyone will notice this, but this system right here cuts off an entire quadrant of the galaxy, so really simple to just rush out there, take it, and then blockade everything out. I've been having some trade route glitches and whatnot, but I'm actually making this one to talk about ship design. So before I go into the ship builder, I'm going to talk about scouts. I don't think there's any issues with the colonizers other than, honestly, I feel like there's kind of no point other than really tedious min-maxy stuff to ever customizing a colonizer. You can either remove an engine to make it build slightly faster, or you can add engines, and I can't see you adding or changing anything else. So for the scout, right now, all of these are AI probes, and it's really, really easy to do this as a player as well, with just one or two scout ships, because you can fire out probes as much as you want. There's no cooldown per turn, you have a stock, but you can fire that entire stock in one turn, and they exist for so long. I had an earlier game where I went the scout tech on, or the scout path, exploration path on the Sophon quest, and with one scout ship, I could literally cover the universe in probes. It was super, super easy. And I don't like that because I actually like that there's sort of a fog of war in this game. I don't know enemy fleet movements over here, and I can't see what's going on in systems. I'd kind of like it if you could see more detail if you had a probe over the system, but then I'd also like it if probes weren't so easy to spam, because if there's any depth to the probe system, then right now the current optimal thing to do is build one or two super probe ships, just max them out on probe modules, and cover the galaxy with them, which basically eliminates the fog of war completely. I can have this lane covered in probes every single turn, and further, you probably should, and it's tedious as hell. So yeah, not fun. That's all I have for that. Let's just make a new ship. Oh, before I do that, I do have all the ship tech, so bam, bam, bam. I don't have the weapon tech for tier 3, but I have everything else. So when I'm going through these menus, just know that's what I have. Oh, I don't even have the tier 1 weapon tech. I forgot I skipped it completely. For the record, not really needed unless you're playing on the harder difficulties. So, either way, I'm obviously missing some weapon tech, but I don't think it totally matters for this video. Let's create something. We've already talked about the Explorer, and my only issue is really that you can easily probe spam. So, do something like this, and that's 6 to 7 to 8 probes on this ship, and if I'd gone for the Explorer path, I could easily do way more. Alright, attacker. So this is the upgraded attacker. As some of you probably already know, you only start out with, I think, these 2 slots in the original model, and then as you upgrade it, it adds a few of these other slots. So the cool thing, or rather the interesting thing to me that I've seen them doing is, you'll notice I don't have missiles on this. I've only got beams, lasers, and slugs, we'll call them. And then, the usual defense. And then they do seem to have different support stuff. So everyone gets the engines, and these get scanners as well. And then I think everyone can do this one, the absorptive shielding. But not everybody gets the rest of the support modules, as you'll see. Or not every hull gets the rest of the support modules. And I think all of that's really good. It means you're supposed to sort of think about what you're doing when you design your ship. However, there's a couple of issues, so we'll use this as the start. First off, I do like that there's only for the tier 2 Hyperium and Titanium, there's no Hyperium plasma beam or tier 2 plasma beam. There's a Hyperium tier 1 plasma beam, which I don't have because I didn't research it, but there's no tier 2. They forcibly separate them out. So if you want Titanium missiles, you can either have tier 1s or tier 2s, but you cannot have Hyperion missiles. So if you didn't swim in strategic resources, it might actually change how you build and what you're going to do. That's good. What sort of annoys me is that Titanium, you'll notice here, we'll compare it to the Era 3. This has the same damage per second of the Era 3, so 21 and 21, and it has a higher crit chance, so 20% on Titanium and 20% and 10% on the Era 3. So it's actually better than the Era 3, and I think it should be because it requires a tech and it requires strategic research. It also costs less industry, although it's a very small amount. It does add up. So I think that's good. Hyperium, however, is identical to its next one. So Tier 2 Hyperium laser is exactly the same as the Tier 3 basic laser. There's no difference whatsoever. At the very least, the titanium has the plus crit chance, which makes it a little bit more interesting. Further, defensive systems are always like this. They're just literally one tier above if you use a resource, which I think is less interesting. It'd be kind of neat if it was like, well, I have lots of Hyperium, and that's really, really good for physical defenses, so I only need one physical defense slot rather than, say, 2 basic slots like I would have normally used. I said would have normally used. There we go. Or something like that. It could use some differentiation. And then support modules, yeah, I'll just touch on those later. So that's my first issue with the weapons. The second thing is sort of comes down to damage per command point and health per command point. So let's kit this out really quickly. Let's not use those because they're very specific. We'll just give them what I'd normally do. Where is it? Yeah. We'll throw a shield on there because the enemy's actually building Era 2 ships. And then this is... Oh, and the other annoying thing is this is almost always superior to this as far as I can tell, especially if these stack over the course of the fleet. It's impossible to tell, though, and that's frustrating. Screw it, whatever. So, okay, done. Stats are up here. It's 107, 120 for 1 command point. This is important to remember because certain things don't scale very well, and I think this is a bigger issue with the defensive ships rather than the offensive ships, because a defensive ship doesn't really do much at this point. So let's go from this to the Decker class. This is the early game support/defensive ship. You'll notice it's got, where is it? This module right here, which I haven't seen on any other ship in the Sophon armory, and it gives the entire flotilla a shield. So an interesting way to give other things shields, and again, I like that it's unique to this hull, but at the very least, I'd like to know why. Further, I only have slugs here, so there's no way to get missiles in your first tier as Sophons. Fine, but I should kind of know that before going in and building these. I'd like to know why that is. It's neat that it's got a roll, but it doesn't say anything. So anyways, this ship is obviously designed to be very, very defensive, as it only has 2 potential weapon slots, I think, yep. And both of those have to be kinetics, which, as I understand it, still shoot down missiles, so that makes it extra defensive and really, really good if it can shoot down missiles not targeted at it, so you could put these in your fleet and shoot things down. That's all good. What gets a little bit weird is it's very, very hard to tell if stacking any of these or using any of these is worth it. And it's very weird because, let's just throw all this on as if it were real again. I've got 3 absorptive shielding modules, so that should be 36% to my fleet damage, or flotilla damage, which is a lot. I can't find out if this is actually working. I haven't been able to really test it. It seems like it's actually not. I don't know. But it would be nice if there were an easier way to tell because, well, if you're going to do an entire fleet of these, I want to know if this is stacking multiplicatively, basically I want to know how it's stacking. I'm a little tired, sorry. So either way, that's kind of a problem, but it gets worse if you look at the Peta class. So this is the Era 2, and now Era 3. I have the upgraded version here. Defensive ship. It has 2 weapon slots, and to give you an idea of how bad that is, now it does hold 4 and they're symmetric and all that, but it can only hold sync lasers, or lasers rather, and it even requires antimatter to use this slot. In fact, this didn't come with the, sorry, it has a 3rd slot now. This is on the base model. The upgraded model, the only weapon slot it gives you is the heavy slot up here. So if we were doing this really quickly, just to compare, this is 341. Go all the way back to the old attacker class. So this is an Era 2 attacker. And we're going to use the same weapons. And we've got 107. Alright, so that thing's stronger, right? Except that thing takes 3 command cap. This takes 1. So for 107, I get about the same for 3 CP, but I also have similar defensive stuff, and I've spread my, basically my health out over multiple targets. I don't know if that matters in this game or not, but it concerns me that it's this close. Now, granted, the Petaclass does get better, and well, that was using that's if I use antimatter. If I don't use the antimatter, it's 171. It just flat loses. So you have to have antimatter. It gets better once you upgrade it because now it's 520, which is a ridiculous increase. In fact, that one gun alone. But the flat Era 2 version of this ship sucks. Not only can it only use these lasers, which are a good weapon, but still extraordinarily restrictive, especially if your opponent sees that you're massing these, they'll just build shields on all their ships. But worse, remember the support class for Era 1. Again, I don't have the flotilla shield. I have a different protection module here. And if I were to do these, I can get 4 of them. So 1, 2, well, I can technically get 5 if I rip out the engines, so we'll go with 5. All right, but for 3 CP, again, or command points or whatever you want to call it, I get 5 of these, whereas for 1 command point, I get 3 of these. So I could have 9 of these systems in my fleet if I just built, or if I just mass-produced the smaller class. The only thing this seems to win on is health, because it's 12. In fact, let's rip the weapons out. Just compare support module to support module. So 5 for 3 command points and 1260 health versus... where are you? Deca? There we go, Deca class. 1, 2... Oh, wow, it's 4. So 4 for 1 command point and 420 health, which times 3 is about 1200. So this is with 0 defense. I think the other one's with 0 defense as I tested it. Yeah, it's 0 defense. So why would I not just mass produce the smaller ones? In fact, I think it's even less industry. I don't see the value in this. I can put a lot more defensive modules on it, I guess. So once fully, it might be this just isn't a fair example because I'm not fully kitting it out. So let's try that real quick. But even then, you're basically wasting a lot of time to research this ship when spamming smaller ones seems to be better. Flat out better at that. These are dedicated, right? Yeah, we're going for maximum support here. So I guess I'll just do what I'd really do, which is 2 and 1. 200, 1800 for 3. And again, here we go. Where are we? Rip out the engines. Maximum this. So it was 200 and 1800 for 3. And then we're going to put in our defense modules. How many do I have? I have the exact same amount, so 660 and 100 for 1, which when you multiply that out for 3, this is vastly better. Now, I suppose this could be alpha strike down easier if you could focus fire. I'm not sure how fleet management handles that, but this is better. Now, granted, you cannot access this as it currently is, this fully kitted out version, unless you research this. The researches are linked together. If you haven't gotten that far in the game, or haven't really noticed, you'll see that there's 2 ships right here. One is the new ship, and one is the upgrade to the old ship. So it gives it more manpower, and it gives it more slots. So they are at least linked together on research, but I see no reason to ever build this, especially as this takes antimatter right now. Once I upgrade it again, it finally starts getting its value. Because remember, I don't even know if it would have all these slots, because, again, I've got the Era 3 upgrade to this, and I don't think it just adds that slot. I think it adds a few of these. So it's actually possible this is even worse than the math is suggesting, and you should only ever build the lower but upgraded version. So huge, huge, huge issue with this ship, or this hull. Now then, what was I trying to do? Oh yes, I'm being an idiot. I wanted to create. So, going to the Giga class, beautiful looking by the way. Now this is the first ship that can mount missiles in the Sophon army. So that's interesting, because you know that until they have access to this, you don't need to build point defense. If slugs actually are point defense in this game, which I think they are, but I haven't seen a dev confirm it, then you'll never need to build those if you're up against the Sophons in a war. You can in fact rip them out and put other stuff on, because you know the Sophons cannot fire missiles until they get to this era. This is again the Era 3 version, I wish you could cycle between the two, has a gazillion weapon hardpoints. And that's all good, but it again only takes missiles and lasers. I think that's once again good to limit these Era 2 ships. Excuse me. Because it allows you to make more strategic decisions. But, again, I have no idea why it can only use these. It doesn't tell me anywhere. And I have no idea why it doesn't have certain support modules. And, again, the weapons differences are really, really boring. There's basically no strategic... Like, it should literally just hide this, as far as I'm concerned. 20 industry for 2 resource is not enough at this point in the game for me to even want the clutter. I'm always going to use this instead. Or frankly, I'm probably not even going to take the time to do it. I'm just going to grab whichever one I want. I just don't care. So it's a little bit frustrating that that's the case. And in this case, it's vastly better than the lower version, I believe. Let me double check. I did the math on this earlier and totally forgot. So, again, remember this is 3 command points versus 1. They have said they're going to be doing some command point and flotilla tweaking and all that stuff, and I'm glad to hear that because it's really good news. Let's go for maximum defense and offense, and then just whatever support. I'm not going to add an engine because that adds health, so that'll make the math easy. 1800, 946, 200 versus... Let's see here, these things. So we'll want those, we'll want as many of these as possible. Wow, this is actually a really tough ship. I've not really realized it since the AI is so easy to stomp. Now I can't fit 3 of these on here with the defenses that I've done, so that's worth noting first of all. But 946, 300, so 810, 107. So health-wise it's better, but attack-wise it's not even close, especially because you can't have 3 of these modules. So this one, it's actually worth, now again, it's worth pointing out, this is the Era 3 version of it, so it's possible the Era 2 version was worse on those numbers, but this is significantly farther ahead in all categories compared to its predecessor, whereas the Petaclass just isn't. So finally, Yada class, your biggest ship. The main thing these all seem to have in common across the races is they can use any weapon, which is already a huge point in their favor, and then they've got just a gazillion slots. So, you know, I can really tear somebody apart. I do kind of wish that each ultimate battleship kind of was the flagship of the army, meaning, or of the race, meaning it really somehow showed off their mentality. So I would love it if this had, I don't know, lots of high-tech fancy slots, because, you know, it's Sophons. Whereas if the Cravers had almost no defense, but just zillions of single weapon modules, like, you know, 20 or 30 single weapon modules. That might be, okay, that's probably tedious, but something like that to sort of show their warlike tendencies, where maybe the ultimate Lumeris ship is going to have tons and tons of support modules and better support module choices, because again, these are currently really boring, and randomly, for some reason, you can't use certain ones on certain ships. You'll notice I can not use any of the repair or the defensive stuff. So, yeah, I'm basically fine with these. They seem to be worth the, frankly, obscene investment of command points and resources. Well, at this point, I can build it in 1 turn, but when you first get it, it's hefty. But I do feel they kind of lose their identity in that, whereas all those other ships, they're Sophon specific in that, oh, well, this can only have lasers, and this can only have lasers, and this can only have machine guns, and you have no access to missiles other than 1 hull in the entire fleet, except for this one. So I kind of like that gives the Sophons a flavor, and this feels very bland, especially compared to all the others, because they're all exactly the same. Or at least they're all very similar. I haven't sat down and figured out if they're exactly the same. I'll probably do that testing later. But they can all use all weapon types. They can all use all defensive types. They have the same set of support types. And I suspect they have extraordinarily similar number of modules. They don't feel like the flagship of the Voidani or the Sophon or the Craver. They just feel like the flagship of Endless Space, where it's just the same ship, different skin. So I really hope these get something to make them feel like, you know, this is the Sophon flagship, not just this is a flagship. So I think I'll cut it here because I have a tendency to go way, way too long. There's a lot more I could talk about, especially with weapons being just not exciting. These are just numbers, and I have no strategic decisions on these other than which ones are easier for me to build. Do I have the resources to build what I want? If yes, great, use those. If not, great, use something else. It's worth noting I don't have any antimatter in this game. I own a third of the frickin' universe, well, galaxy, and I managed to not get a single planet with it, so that's actually kind of cool. I like that. It means, I'm actually going to have to consider what I'm going to do. Oh no, I have one here, which I can't colonize currently because I'm lazy. But yeah, I mean, that's a pretty big deal, and that's really interesting that you can have that happen. But beyond that, weapons just suck. So, main points here. Petaclass currently seems totally useless, literal waste of resources and time. You might still grab the research, but then you should mass produce the Deci or Deci or whatever class, whatever the lower one was. And in general, weapons are just really not interesting at all right now. I'm hoping that's just an alpha thing and they're going to expand on it later. But and I know fighters and bombers are coming. But yeah, not impressed. I'm hoping at the very least we get more, what has it? There we go. More stuff like the slugs here, where it has a secondary purpose and slugs can actually shoot down missiles. It's worth throwing them on your ship just as a missile defense. Again, if that's the case, haven't seen the devs confirm it. But yeah, right now I generally just don't even care about these. I just build whatever I can that has the highest damage, and that's it. And that's not very exciting. So hoping the game continues to get better, and that's about it. Good luck, have fun.